to visualize having to make a life-changing decision that can impact you or your family for the rest of your life. You see, I experienced this life-changing event, and I'd like to share it with you. My name is Dr. R Jordon. I have a PhD in Organizational Development and Leadership. I'm a wife, mother, and breast cancer survivor who enjoys life every single day. You see, my daughter experienced a life-changing event in 2018 when she was having a simple cosmetic surgery to correct something that happened at birth. See, in 1994, my daughter was born with something called a lymphangioma, which is a mass of fluid that was on her body. My husband and I were confused as to how she got this. I thought it was because I had a trait of sickle cell anemia. So we had her blood tested, and turns out that she was positive for sickle cell anemia. However, that had nothing to do with her lymphangioma. So in 2018, my daughter wanted to correct this birth defect on her chest, and we saw a plastic surgeon, went through the reviews. We had the physician do the full prep work, and everything looked great. So we were excited about her procedure. The morning of the surgery, everything went great. The doctor said that she would recover just well. And as we were preparing to leave that next morning after surgery, the unexpected happened. My daughter went into cardiac arrest as a result of a blood clot. We were devastated, shocked, confused, not knowing how this potentially could happen to a 25-year-old healthy athlete. The doctors worked diligently to save our daughter's life. However, after 15 minutes, they came and said they were placing her on life support. So they did. On day 14, my husband and I had to make a decision. We had two choices. Number one was to keep her on life support and see how she does. Or number two, to take her off of life support and see if she progresses on her own. We opted to take her off of life support and allow her to live, if that was what was going to happen. Because leaving her on life support, she would more than likely get pneumonia and pass away. So the very next morning, I go in with the physician, and he begins to remove the machines. He does leave on one, which is the dialysis machine, and that's because her kidneys were not at 100%. As he begins to remove the breathing tube, to our surprise, my daughter utters, "I'm back." Excited, overwhelmed, overjoyed that she was able to survive on her own, and she's doing well today. We did, however, decide to have her go and get her blood tested through a hereditary exam to find out what was causing this to happen to her. It turns out that our daughter was diagnosed with something called a factor V Leadum gene mutation. So the question I'll ask you, and why I'm telling you the story, is, do you understand or know anything about your family history? Do you know anything about your genetics? You see, most people would probably say yes. But do you know that not knowing your hereditary gene track, your history, is like a ticking time bomb? So let me explain why. You see, most people know what a blood clot is. It's a clump of blood that helps and protects the body when it's injured. So it clots the blood. And a blood clot can occur in different parts of the body. Now, factor V is a protein that's actually in the blood, and it does help clotting. But then there's something called factor V mutation, which is a rare inherited gene that comes from parents. Now, factor V is known, or is most common, or you can know about it in two areas or two symptoms that might come to mind. The first is a DVT, which most people have heard of, which is deep vein thrombosis, which is a clot in the veins, or PE, or pulmonary embolism, which is a loss of blood flow to the lungs. You see, most people have heard of these things, but not realizing the risk of factor V or getting a blood clot. So factor V is something that is most common in people of European descent. 1 in 50 people of European descent carry the factor V gene mutation. And out of that, it is most common in Caucasian and European descent. It's very similar to sickle cell anemia, which is most common in African American descent. People don't realize that they're just one blood clot away from death. One of the things that's interesting is that children that are born from mixed ethnicities carry one, or could carry one copy of that factor V gene mutation. And that means that they are 10 times more likely to have a blood clot. 10 times more likely. So according to the CDC, 900,000 people could potentially die of a blood clot or pulmonary embolism each year, with 25% of those people dying. That's why it's so important for us to understand our family history, know our genetics. People don't realize how close they are to dying. When the average person thinks it'll be natural causes or it could be an accident. You see, a pulmonary embolism or a blood clot has no age limit. It has no time limit. And that's why it's so important for we as individuals to know our family history, to have our blood analysis done so that we're better prepared. So who can get this factor V gene mutation? It's our children. It's our grandchildren. It's our adopted children. Anyone can get this factor V gene mutation. So what can we as parents do to prevent this horrific incident from happening? Well, there's 2 simple steps that mothers or parents can do. The first is having a genetic test done. It is so important to know your family history. And then secondly, having a factor V Leadum test done. Get that full analysis of your blood to see how the hemoglobin is made up. You see, early diagnosis and treatment are essential to prevent future complications from happening. It can happen in a minor surgery or major surgery. I urge you today to take action, not just for your children, but for future generations to come. Together, we can ensure that genetic mysteries no longer hold the power to take lives unexpectedly.